एक जो रिक्वेस्ट आई थिंक आई कि अगर हम थोड़ा बहुत हिंदी में भी बातचीत करेंगे तो ज़्यादातर जो ऑडियंस है वो समझ पाएगी, तो उसकी एक बार हम लोग कोशिश करते हैं. टॉपिक के बारे में काफ़ी डिटेल में अदिति ने ऑलरेडी बता दिया है, बट ब्रॉडली स्पीकिंग हम जो पूरे दिन से बात कर रहे हैं दैट हायर एजुकेशन स्टिल टुडे इन दिस कंट्री is looked as a ladder and a way out. We at Karta believe it's one of the very few ways out of escaping intergenerational marginalization, right? And at the same time, we now have a huge public and philanthropic interest in skilling and vocational training as opportunities or ways out of unemployment or creating some sort of access. And so that's what we're trying to figure out, that what is the way forward. I think let's start with Ravish first, right? And just tell us a little about yourself, your background, and what does your father do? And that if you were, would you like to do what he does? If you get a skilling degree of that, a professional skilling degree of that for 6 months.
So yeah, first of all, warm greeting to everyone. And as you mentioned, like, I want to share my experience first, like what does my parents do and how it has been the experience till now. So मैं थोड़ी बहुत experiences थोड़ा overlap करेगा जो भी SSK के students हैं, and they will do agree with me. Like हम जो community से belong करते हैं, that is called Mushar community. And I'll tell you frankly, I'll tell you the meaning of it. What does it mean? So Mushar is made of two words. First is mus, and the second one is har, means the one who eat rats and sustain their life. So that is the actual meaning. So our ancestor has been doing that. So they didn't have much resources to rely on. So that's why the only thing which mammals they like get in the fields, whatever they do get to eat in free, you can say. So ऐसे वो लोग अपना like they used to sustain their life. So that's how we got this name from like so-called upper class people. So ऐसे हमारा बैकग्राउंड रहा है. एंड माई फादर, इफ़ आई टॉक अबाउट माई फादर, मेरे पिताजी एक नॉर्मल से फार्मर कह सकते हैं, एंड ऑल्सो अ सीजनल वर्कर. समटाइम्स ही विल डू लाइक कंस्ट्रक्शन वर्क एंड ऑल, तो वो करते हैं. एंड दैट्स हाउ आई हैव बीन रेज्ड इन. एंड द टॉपिक इटसेल्फ इज़ लाइक ऑल्सो सोशल मोबिलिटी. सो आप लोग कुछ ऑब्जर्व कर पा रहे होंगे, लाइक फर्स्ट ईयर के स्टूडेंट्स जब शेयर कर रहे थे एक्सपीरियंस, तो दे वर सेइंग लाइक हम लोग अंडर कॉन्फिडेंट थे जब फर्स्ट ईयर में थे. राइट नाउ दे आर कंडक्टिंग एवरीथिंग, दे आर शेयरिंग एक्सपीरियंसेस. सो व्हाट इज़ दैट थिंग, लाइक कैसे हो रहा है एंड लाइक कैसे हो पा रही है सब सारी चीज़ें. सो दैट इज़ द ओनली एम्बियंस विच वी आर गेटिंग राइट नाउ, द मेंटरशिप दैट वी आर गेटिंग राइट नाउ, द प्लेस वेयर वी आर गेटिंग टू रेज आवर वॉइस, दैट इज़ द ओनली वन थिंग, दैट इज ऑल्सो वन थिंग. Communication, confidence, right? So these are the things which is enabling this social mobility, and these are the some small pocket of like social mobility we can say that. So this has been the like experience of mine, like as I told my background right now. And if I talk about like degree and higher education is not just a long term mobility, and it's not like only the option of having the bread earning, right? So that is not the thing. So that essentially says like how we are building ourselves, right? How we are capabling us, and how we are trying to serve back to the society. So these are the like largely you can say long term goals from our end. And being the first generation learner, and so we need to get this ecosystem wherein we can foster ourselves. We get our thoughts to share to everyone, right? So these are the things which I want to convolute right now. And yeah, looking forward to more questions.
Sure, I think I'll head to Professor Sareen first. Just exploring this, are we expanding the opportunities, or are we creating two very different futures for two very different social classes here?
I mean, ये तो हमारी सभ्यता है कि हमने ये डिवीज़न रखा हुआ है कि ये काम हाथ वाला काम और दिमाग वाला काम, और कि जो हाथ वाला काम करता है उसको स्कूलिंग की ज़रूरत नहीं होती है, तो स्कूलिंग की ज़रूरत नहीं होती तो ठीक है स्किलिंग की ज़रूरत कर देते हैं। तो ये मतलब आई मीन यू कांट क्रिटिसाइज द आइडिया ऑफ स्किलिंग। स्किल्स ज़रूरी हैं, कौन से स्किल्स हैं और वो स्किल्स में कितनी डिग्निटी एसोसिएटेड है, राइट? I mean, my first job, one of my first jobs was अपने डॉर्म जहाँ में रहता था उसकी सीढ़ियों को झाड़ू लगाना सुबह उठ के, इंडिया में नहीं, अमेरिका में, राइट? I mean, the point is the absence of dignity across the board is a critical element that as a society we've not been able to deal with. And we cannot deal with the question of dignity divorced from the economic aspects as well, right? ऐसा नहीं बोल सकते कि हम आपके पैर धो दें तो सडनली अब आपको डिग्निटी मिल गई। अगर आप सैनिटेशन वर्कर हैं, खाली उनके पैर धोने से डिग्निटी नहीं मिल जाती, उनको रिकग्निशन चाहिए, उनको इकोनॉमिक सैलरी, एक वर्कर के रूप में सैलरी चाहिए। आशा जो हैं उनको भी सैलरी चाहिए, एक ऑनरेरियम केवल देके आप नहीं निकल सकते। सो आई थिंक वी आर क्रिएटिंग दैट, एंड आई जस्ट एंड विद सॉर्ट ऑफ सेइंग, ये जो डेमोग्राफिक डिविडेंड का जो डिस्कोर्स फैला हुआ है वो तो यही बोलता है ना कि हम जो भी यूथ हैं, जो भी युवा हैं, उनको एक तरीके से एक इंस्ट्रूमेंट की तरह यूज़ करना चाहते हैं टू प्रोड्यूस समथिंग जिसमें डिविडेंड हो। ठीक है, डिविडेंड, मुझे वो भाषा भी I'm accepting, but how is the dividend going to be distributed, right? Who will be the beneficiaries of that dividend, right? उसकी भी तो चर्चा होनी चाहिए। And till that happens, then the question that you are raising is also a question about, can we trust? If there is somebody advocating skills, right? Can we trust why this is being advocated? What is the objective? And I personally feel, yes, we do need to emphasize skills. I mean, we have been in a sense critiquing this question about is higher education only for jobs? But अब तो higher education के बाद भी नौकरियां नहीं मिल रही हैं. I mean, largest section amongst the unemployed are graduates. So we do need to have skills. We do need to ask the question about sort of labor market where it integrates, but with a very different frame. So, yeah.
Just one quick question, because we've been having this conversation, right? But would the policy maker ever recommend skilling or vocational to their own children?
I wouldn't. I mean, why a policy maker? Person with, see, we see these as hierarchical, right? And we see these as tracks which don't meet anywhere. And this again goes back to the point that I was trying to make in the morning, that you do need some basic functioning, right? Agar aapko, I mean, a skill can be being able to play a musical instrument, right? But a skill can be a photographer, right? But with those skills, will I be able to live a decent quality of life? Will I be able to provide a decent quality of education for my children, healthcare? So, only when we have some kind of a foundational baseline, no policymaker and no person with my choices, I mean, I'm not going to sacrifice my kids' lives because of some ideals, principles, values that I have. I'm not built that way. I apologize, but that's sort of the reality.
Your views, ma'am?
To me, I think skilling is very important. बहुत अच्छा है आज की डेट में, बिल्कुल ख़राब चीज़ नहीं है. Education भी important है, but if I talk about myself, I have been working extensively into our slums area with Tata Delhi Distribution Limited. We have 220 JJ clusters of slums in our area, and I have been working along with these beneficiaries since last so many years. उनका वो डिफ़िकल्टी हमने देखा है. आफ्टर क्लास 10th उनको पढ़ने का चांस है ही नहीं. उनको दे हैव टू अर्न टू मेक देयर एंड्स मीट. किसी के फादर हैज़ पास्ड अवे, या फैमिली में सिस्टर्स को टेक केयर करना है, मदर को टेक केयर करना है. दे कैन नॉट गेट हायर एजुकेशन, उनके पास कोई स्कोप नहीं है. ऐसे में स्किलिंग बहुत अच्छा है. आई थिंक द वे इट इज़ बिंग प्रमोटेड एज इन डेट, it's a blessing for them. I have witnessed personally with so many people in our area. हम लोग भी बहुत स्किलिंग करते हैं, ऑल्दो बेसिक लेवल का करते हैं एट टाटा पावर रीगल, जो हम लोग बेनिफिशरीज को कराते हैं. सो स्किलिंग अपने आप में बहुत अच्छा एक स्कोप दे रहा है उन लोग को टू रन देयर रिस्पेक्टिव हाउसेस. बट येस, अभी डॉक्टर सरीन ने कहा, प्रोफेसर सरीन ने कहा कि ऑब्वियसली वो अपने बच्चों को उस एरिया में नहीं प्रेफर करेंगे, मैं भी नहीं करूँगी. सो व्हाट इज़ द नीड? वो डिग्निटी देना, जो स्टेयर्स क्लीन करना यूएस में एक नॉर्मल चीज़ माना जाता है, इंडिया में हम उसको वी लुक एट इट इन अ वेरी वेरी मतलब ऑफेंसिव मैनर शायद बोलेंगे. सो देर इज़ अ नीड टू मेक स्किलिंग डिग्निफाइड. एज अ पेरेंट ऑल्सो अभी गवर्नमेंट बहुत कुछ कर रही है. सीबीएसई ने स्कूल करिकुलम में एक स्किल को मैंडेटरी कर दिया है काफ़ी जगह. इट्स अ ब्यूटिफुल मूव. आपके पास स्किलिंग है तो चाहे कोविड आ जाए या एम्प्लॉयमेंट जॉब अपॉर्चुनिटीज चली जाएं, यू ऑलरेडी हैव इट इन योर हैंड कि उससे आप अपना करियर, उससे आप अपना लाइफ कभी भी चला सकते हैं. सो द नीड इज़ टू मेक स्किलिंग डिग्निफाइड एंड टू क्रिएट दैट लेडर कि एक बार स्किलिंग करके आप एक जॉब में आ गए, यू हैव दोज अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ कि उसके बाद आप आगे ग्रो करते रहें, आगे अपना एजुकेशन भी करते रहें, काम भी करते रहें, क्योंकि आपको अपना घर चलाना है. सो वो कुछ एलिमेंट्स को अगर हम ब्रिज कर देते हैं, वो लेडर क्रिएट कर देते हैं, दिस इज ऑन मी एज एन इंडस्ट्री ऑल्सो एंड ऑन एजुकेशन specialists also and as a society also. So if we create those channels, I think skilling can work very well. So that is how I believe.
हाय. सो मनीषा जी के पॉइंट को मैं थोड़ा सा एक्सटेंड कर रहा हूँ. 2-3 पॉइंट्स हैं यहाँ पे. एक पॉइंट ये है कि स्किलिंग आज के दिन में इज एन एनेबलर टू फाइंड अ वोकेशन. वोकेशन इज इम्पॉर्टेंट बिकॉज दैट गिव्स यू लाइवलीहुड. लाइवलीहुड की ज़रूरत बहुत ज़्यादा है. इफ़ यू अर्न अ लाइवलीहुड, योर लाइफ कैन ट्रांसफॉर्म. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, हम लोग का एक फाउंडेशन है, वी कॉल इट PanIIT Alumni Reach for India Foundation. For the last 6 years, we have been working with the government of Jharkhand. We have opened skill institutions, कौशल विद्यालय बोलते हैं, कौशल कॉलेज बोलते हैं, जहाँ पे गांव के अंडर प्रिविलेज मीन्स बिलो पॉवर्टी लाइन बच्चों को ले आके स्कूल से उनको स्किल पे ट्रेनिंग देती है. क्या स्किल पे? वेल्डिंग, मशीनिंग, इलेक्ट्रिशियन, मैकेनिकल रिपेयर, नर्सिंग, इस तरह की ट्रेनिंग दी जाती है. सो आई एम टोल्ड that their families have an average annual income of about 10,000 rupees. The child, after going through a 3-month of program, is placed on a job which gives the child 15,000 to 20,000 rupees a month. It is definitely transformative. So, importance of skill is very, very critical because it gives you easy access or a faster access to livelihood. एजुकेशन की अगर बात करें, एजुकेशन में हम लोगों ने अभी हमारे जितनी भी बातें हुई हैं, पहली चीज़ ये हम लोग क्लियर समझना चाहिए, हम लोगों ने अपने दिमाग में एजुकेशन को प्रेफर्ड, नॉन प्रेफर्ड एंड हेंस इज्जतदार या बब्बे इज्जत वाला इस तरह का हम लोगों ने कर दिया है. सो कोई भी हाथ से काम कर रहा है, दैट फेलो इज अ लेबर. दैट इज वाई आई जनरली हैव एन ऑब्जेक्शन टू लेबर लॉज और लेबर वॉट एवर, राइट? But the point is, skilled artisans are respected everywhere in the world except in the subcontinent. So, if that is so, then everyone will aspire to reach what is desirable. जिस समय मैं कॉलेज में घुसा हूँ, उस समय डॉक्टरी और इंजीनियरिंग were the 2 most favored ones, right? There were various reasons, but वहाँ पे लोग जाते थे. After 40 years now, if I look back and see, डॉक्टरी जितने लोगों ने करी उसमें से about 50% of them have moved to administrative work and they don't do medicine, don't practice medicine anymore. Engineering is even worse. 100 इंजीनियर अगर निकलते हैं, right? about 80 of the people switch over to different lines. 50 of them go to finance, others go to various streams, less than 20 are in hardcore engineering. When I say engineering, I'm talking about design, I'm talking about manufacturing, I'm talking about associated activities. So the point is, मैं बोलता हूँ कि इंजीनियरिंग करूँगा, पर इंजीनियरिंग करके क्या करूँगा वो completely अलग चीज़ है. So if I am talking about education, what education provides me with is using a subject or a domain as a reference. It teaches me how to analyze what is happening around me, take a look at the options available, and figure out what is a possible action that I can take. I may fail, not fail, that's a consequence. Now that thinking process is what we call as critical thinking, which also allows us to do outside thinking. Unfortunately, आज के दिन में, because of the way we are treating education, which is transactional, somebody was telling me कि हर problem का एक right answer होता है. वो right answer सिखाने के चक्कर में critical thinking तो हम लोगों ने उड़ा दिया. So the purpose of education, which is to enlarge your knowledge, enlarge your area within which you can think, increase, expand your boundary, that has gone out of the window. We are basically using education as a method of clearing an exam and getting somewhere where I may or may not be able to stay. इसका एक और प्रॉब्लम जो है, and this is a slightly larger problem, वो ये है कि many people who come through these exams into these programs which are extremely rigorous, they do not have the foundation for it. In the process, whatever reports that we read in the papers about some of these students, pitiful, but those are a fact. So first and foremost, before we even talk about higher education, my personal thought is foundational education, middle education and secondary education, इनको तो strong करना पड़ेगा. बच्चे को minimum arithmetic skill आना चाहिए, minimum communication skill. I am not saying English. Communication मतलब should be able to write 2 sentences, write a paragraph, बोल तो सके कि मैं सोच क्या रहा हूँ और क्यों सोच रहा हूँ. आज के दिन में हम लोग ज़्यादातर लोग even at senior positions 2 चिट्ठी नहीं लिख, 2 चिट्ठी के 2 सेंटेंस नहीं लिख सकते. So when we are talking about education, we are talking about figuring out how to communicate, figuring out how to access the knowledge that is already available in the world, which is through reading and referencing, and then applying that to my problem solving or looking at any other area from a different perspective altogether, bringing in my own perspective. If that does not happen, then whatever is we call education is not actually an education. It is another transaction. So from the way I see it, yes, education is important. Higher education is also important. But livelihood goes parallel to it. Livelihood is the first priority. And then people, as they become comfortable with their livelihood, they decide to upgrade their lives. But pehle livelihood to aayega. Right? So this is one very important construct that is there in my mind. Another thing which I feel, whenever we start with the terms called marginalization and everything else, and pardon me for saying so, we actually start with looking at deficits. In the process, my thought only becomes what is deficit and not what is available. And thereby I close all my options. And then I say, oh, I'm stuck and everybody is screwing me all over. Pardon my language. So point is, I think we need to, when we are getting into education, we need to ensure that the educators do not apply their personal biases. They actually educate. The child is given the opportunity, and I firmly believe each and every child of this country deserves to be educated, because that education is needed for them to even survive at the basic level. At the same time, that is the foundation on which they can grow up. And with the way the environment is changing and being driven by technology more and more, it is all the more important. As regards education, कि मैं क्या करूँ, मैं computer science करूँगा. Computer science में आधे से ज़्यादा लोग are becoming redundant because the way that particular part of the business is being handled is changed completely, and it will keep on changing. So as a result, we should not look at education as an end of something, but as a way of figuring out how to think when I face with a situation which I've never faced before, nor has anybody else faced before. That is when I can tide myself over that uncertain period. That is what I wanted to say. Thanks.
So first I'll apologize. My Hindi is not good, so I'll keep to English. Maybe you can translate. Going back at the morning, what Professor said, I also come from a lot of privilege. So it's an alien experience to hear all of you. It's a new universe for me to hear all of this. Picking up what Sir has just said, right? What I've observed is it's created a new, almost a business, because education isn't doing what it is doing. So then civil society and a whole bunch of other businesses have propped up that are sort of, because industry has said there is some gap and institutions aren't preparing kids. So then there is a whole business that has set up to skill, quote unquote, skill people to make them ready, right? What we are trying to do at United Way is what you, picking up your dignity comment, right of choice. It's the people's choice to decide whether they want to be skilled a certain way or not. They choose. So whether it be, I think it was Pooja or someone said her brother is in an institution that is not giving access. So we work with those kinds of institutions. The way we do it is both for the kids as well as for the professors. We just take them and show them what the industry wants and say that, hey, this is what this is, and let them decide, hey, what else. And they come to us and then say, okay, this is how we can get skilled or not skilled, right? And dignity of labor, there's in my previous sort of iteration of being more on the impact investor side, we used to work with waste worker communities. And the whole point of the business was, people have done it because it's a livelihood, as Sir was saying, it's ends to make a living. What we said is, can we build agency among these people so that the next generation chooses whether to be part of it or not? So it's their choice. We are not saying they are marginalized or something. We're just saying we are a sounding board so that they can make that choice, you know, and whether it be with higher education and then bridging it, whether it be those that have fallen out of workforce for whatever reason, and then say that, hey, here's the opportunity, and be that platform. And that's what we're going to try and do, and hopefully others can also do that, is what the hope is.
Sure. So thank you for the first round of pointers on this. But like the problem again is what we're going to get back to is dignity of labor. The other is what Manisha rightly said, that it's never out of choice. It's just forced into a situation where you have to do that. So what are we looking like at that? Like a huge population set, which is just then trapped in very low wages, with no upward mobility and no dignity, or just catering to the current economic labor reality where it's just gig economy or short-term skillings which can fulfill demand? Or how do we find a way out of this? Like even in terms of, let's say, sure, higher education does its own purpose. How do you connect then skilling with continued education where there is some shot at upward mobility?
You know, when we talk about skilling, we forget that the professional courses that we talk about are also skilling, right? Only thing is that we have propagated the fact that being an engineer is cool, but being a mechanic is not cool, right? So that is something which has to do with our mindset, and no amount of formalization, policy, or whatever will take it away, right? At this point of time, I think we have a better chance because most of our new employees that are coming in through various interventions and otherwise are a larger mix. We still do not have that segregation which used to be earlier. I heard somebody who said कि यार बेटा क्या करते हो, बोला मैं जी एयरपोर्ट में प्लेन में पायलट हूँ. अच्छा ड्राइवर हो. So in their mind, somebody who drives a vehicle is somewhere down the scale, right? So obviously, what Ravish just said, that also makes sense, because then anybody who is not doing something which is considered to be important will be considered to be absolutely not to be respected. So dignity of labor, if we respect labor and the outcome that it brings, then and only then we can assure dignity of labor. At the same time, your question about skilling, allowing mobility, yes, it does. In our kind of social milieu, it may take a bit more time, but yes, skilled people are today not so easy to find. For all our maintenance jobs, we have people who do not have any certificate, whatever, they have the skills. But that confidence and other things is not there at all. And we don't dignify them with giving them what they're asking for as their genuine rates and other things. Right? We will negotiate with them. But somebody will come who's, let us say, wears a suit, speaks English, and comes in a vehicle, will charge 5 times, 10 times more, will not bother. And we may actually get. So these are some of the constructs in our mind which we need to clear. And then possibly we will be able to dignify labor, and when we dignify labor, then possibly some of these constructs will move away.
I want to add on that, like upskilling is very necessary. That's right. But जैसे हम लोग जैसे फर्स्ट जनरेशन लर्नर हैं, सो आई बिलीव एक सस्टेनेबल सिस्टम होना चाहिए जहाँ पे हम लोग अच्छे से क्योंकि वी बिलोंग फ्रॉम दैट कम्युनिटी जहाँ पे हम लोग बचपन से चीज़ें मतलब हमें इन्वॉल्व नहीं रहती है, हमें चीज़ें से एक्सपोजर नहीं ज़्यादा मिलती है. फॉर एग्जांपल इफ़ आई शेयर माय एक्सपीरियंस, तो व्हेन आई यूज्ड टू गो टू ट्यूशन, हमें क्या किया जाता था, जैसे नॉर्मल स्टूडेंट्स को एक मेज़ रहती थी, उन्हें वहाँ पे बैठाया जाता था. बट आई अलॉन्ग विद माई कज़न, दे हैव टू सिट ऑन द फ्लोर. हम लोग को ये बोला जाता था कि तुम्हें अच्छा मतलब तुम्हें कूलिंग फील होगा जब फ्लोर पे बैठोगे. दे यूज्ड टू गिव दिस काइंड ऑफ एक्सप्लेनेशन. हम लोग ऐसे कम्युनिटी से आते हैं एंड ऐसे हमारा माइंडसेट डेवलप नहीं होता है ज़्यादा जब हम हायर एजुकेशन के लिए भी जाते हैं. एंड व्हेन वी गेट एक्सपोज टू दोज काइंड ऑफ इन्वायरमेंट, तो हमें ऐसा एम्बियंस चाहिए होता है जहाँ पे खुल के सारी चीज़ें बात कर सकें. एंड दैट इज़ पॉसिबल व्हेन आप एक हायर एजुकेशन ले रहे हो. And as I mentioned in the beginning, upskilling is necessary, but that is an, you can say, supplement thing. अगर आपको एक तरह से base and like if you get the base, after that आप upskilling कर सकते हो, you can go on and on, right? But for us like first generation learner, हमें एक तरह से base चाहिए होता है. Means we need to have like proper education. For example, higher education हमें ज़रूरत है अभी के for us, right? तो अभी हम लोग इसके बाद हमारे जनरेशन जो होंगे वो अपस्किलिंग पे ज़्यादा ध्यान दे सकते हैं, बिकॉज वी ऑलरेडी हैव दैट यू कैन से बेस, राइट? सो एजुकेशन इज़ नॉट ओनली अबाउट लाइक अपस्किलिंग एंड एवरीथिंग, इट इज़ ऑल्सो अबाउट माइंड सेट, like how we have went through. So that is also one thing we have to improve on, and that's how social mobility will be taken in positive way. So yeah.
If I can make a suggestion, if आप लोग में काफ़ी लोगों ने ये शायद ये पिक्चर देखी होगी, यूट्यूब में है स्कूलिंग द वर्ल्ड. अगर नहीं देखी है तो ज़रूर एक बार देखिएगा स्कूलिंग द वर्ल्ड. और उसमें बहुत मतलब काफ़ी चीज़ें हैं जो थोड़ी कंट्रोवर्शियल भी हैं, बट एक चीज़ जो है कि ये जो हमारा जो स्कूलिंग, आई थिंक इट्स रिलेटेड टू मैनी ऑफ द थिंग्स वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट, कि जो स्कूलिंग में जो एजुकेशन किया जाता है वो इतना डीकॉन्टेक्चुअलाइज्ड होता है, वो लोकल कॉन्टेक्स्ट से बिल्कुल जुड़ा नहीं रहता है. और इस वजह से ही एक तरीके से जो सेपरेशन आता है बिटवीन लाइवलीहुड एंड एजुकेशन, वो वहीं शुरू हो जाता है. क्योंकि जो हम जो चीज़ें बच्चों को सिखाना चाह रहे हैं, जिन पर परीक्षा करना चाह रहे हैं, वो इतना जो लोकल कॉन्टेक्स्ट से सेपरेट है, तो उसी से ये समस्या शुरू भी होती है. द अदर थिंग, ये जो the shortage of skilled labor, right? And this is what when I had started some research, ये इसी बिकॉज ये एक इकोनॉमिस्ट के लिए ये बहुत एक पैराडॉक्स की बात होती है कि आप शॉर्टेज की बात करते हैं, तो अगर शॉर्टेज है तो फिर वहाँ वेजेस बढ़नी चाहिए ना, स्किल में का प्रीमियम बढ़ना चाहिए अगर शॉर्टेज है स्किल के लिए। पर जो भी इंडस्ट्रीज में देख रहा था जहाँ पर आप जहाँ बोला जा रहा था कि स्किल शॉर्टेज है, जहाँ हमें और स्किल्ड वर्कर्स की ज़रूरत है, उन सभी इंडस्ट्रीज में डिक्लाइनिंग वेजेस थी। तो फिर ये हम किस नज़रिए से इसको देखना चाह रहे हैं, आई थिंक वो भी मतलब आई थिंक दैट ओरिएंटेशन हैज़ टू चेंज, राइट। The one fundamental thing जो distinguish करता है इंडियन स्किलिंग लैंडस्केप को फ्रॉम अदर कंट्रीज, इट्स नॉट कि दिस इज नॉट एन इशू इन अदर कंट्रीज, राइट। इंडस्ट्री हैज अ लॉट ऑफ स्किन इन द गेम, मतलब दे मेक इन्वेस्टमेंट्स फॉर इन द स्किलिंग industry itself. Industry in India, corporate houses, etc., have by and large stayed away. They have wanted to use, I mean, skilling at the end of the day is very tied in to very specific activities. आपको कार बनाना सिखाया जाएगा, तो इसका गेन क्लियरली कार मैन्युफैक्चरर्स को जाएगा। तो फिर आप एज अ कार मैन्युफैक्चरर आप क्यों नहीं लार्ज स्केल स्किलिंग प्रोग्राम्स में इन्वेस्ट करते हो? आपने हायर कर लिया, फिर आप स्किलिंग करोगे थोड़ा बहुत, आई मीन, एंड फिर आप कॉन्ट्रैक्ट वर्कर्स की इस्तेमाल करोगे। ऑटो इंडस्ट्री में इन मनेसर every month, in a month, at least 600 workers lose a finger, right, or a limb, because they're working on power presses. Just in Manesar, in 30 days, this is work done by Safe in India. 10,000 रुपए का एक वो पिन वो बदलना पड़ता है, उसको नहीं बदलते हैं, उसको उसमें लैक्सिटी करते हैं, उस वजह से पीपल के लिम्स कटते हैं। क्योंकि हमारे, और ये टियर 1 मैन्युफैक्चरिंग उसमें नहीं हो रहा है, ये टियर 2 टियर 3 कॉन्ट्रैक्टेड वर्क है जो। तो किस मुंह से हम कह सकते हैं कि ये स्किलिंग करके इनको हम पावर प्रेस बनाना सिखा दें, जब तक हम ये जो पूरा जो ढांचा है, एंड दिस इज ये जो ढांचा जो हमारा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर है, इट्स अ लो लेवल इक्विलिब्रियम। वी विल नेवर बी एबल टू कैटapult इनटू अ विकसित भारत if we remain in this low level equilibrium, right? We have to move to that high level equilibrium in which, like in Japan, I mean, the industry, the firm cares about the worker, and it's not like India में examples नहीं रहे हैं. I come from Jamshedpur, right? I mean, the Tata's का example रहा है, right? So we have examples also. So I think your question, I mean, what do we do? Right? It requires a fundamental reshift, and I think that's where we don't have an option but to look at the government to make this shift in this direction. I mean, civil society can play a role in sort of, sorry to use the word band-aids, but at the end of the day, it will require some large-scale, massive shifts.
Just to add to what you just said, I remember in other countries, for example, my daughter is in Canada. She says that one of their friends was a banker here, went to Canada, did not find a job, so switched to being a truck driver for hazardous chemicals. That person's income, it seems, was far more than a vice president of a company. Because that job is in demand, and that is something which nobody wants to take up because of the long time they stay away from home, nobody wants to go there. So they have given additional plus the hazardous benefits. Unfortunately, in our country, our entrepreneurs, businessmen, business houses are so focused on cost as a single point that they try and cut corners many times, which is true, and I agree with you on that.
But as long as it's just purely on labor arbitrage, right, without any care, concern, or let's say upskilling or building it into a knowledge economy, this is the same loop. It's going to keep on going. And education also gives you a lot of societal power, right? The fact that someone like a Vikas or Ravish can sit here, stand, talk, or that if they go back to their villages now, they would be invited by other family members of higher caste to interact with. That is never going to happen to, let's say, a Zepto worker who is working at a dark store. So it's a loop. So that's
as a part of the cost structure, what has happened is over the years, our industry has moved away from training which used to be a part. For example, when I came into the workforce, we had an apprenticeship act under which I had to work. During that particular period, my salary was paid by the government. Right after that, I went into regular salary and all. That particular act is, I think, in disarray. Nobody follows it anymore. Then the companies do not invest in training their people. MNCs and some large PSUs do, others don't, right? So on top of it, disregard for labor is something that the smaller companies and others, many of them actually operate hazardous practices, which they don't because, again, yaar daam bad jayega. So those are some of the things. So as Professor Sareen said, their framework, ढांचा अगर देखना है, ढांचे में बहुत जगह में change करना है. But if you just focus at this point of time on the topic of the panel, yes, education is important, but skilling is also important. At the same time, we also need to figure out how to destigmatize what we call as labor work.
Sure. And I mean, another thing that we are looking at is the rapidly changing world that you're saying, right? So any kind of manual job is automatically at a risk of automation and...
Not so.
Okay.
Not so. The nature of job is changing. Does not mean that manual work where a lot of manual activities, for example, when you're constructing, right, you're doing a whole lot of work manually. I don't think you can have a system which can go up the walls and do some work there, plastering or whatever. It will become too costly. So many of the work that is manual, repetitive and works by rules will change. But wherever the work requires thinking or a change in the way of working, that still will remain in the domain of an individual. Right? Unfortunate part is that the story that we are seeing in all the media and everything else, AI, if you do not know AI, you will be put out of a job. Now, those kind of things are stupidity, and those things need to be stopped. Because people said that the same thing. If we have steam engines, then the horses and everything else will go and nobody will find food or anything. I mean, we have survived those changes for so many years. Computers have come. We are still working, right? So nature of work will change. Rule-based repetitive work may become automated, which means those people will need to be either reskilled or they will go out of the workforce, right? With regards to what we call as artisan work, much of that may still remain in the area of, at the most, semi-automated, but not full automation.
I was thinking about the dignity of labor, and so a conversation I was having, someone said, if you take a pledge, even in private, you will try and keep an oath that, and Professor, and you said that maybe you won't, right? There are certain biases, there are certain lack of empathy that we are doing ourselves, right, in our personal lives. So an ask to everyone here is, can in our personal capacity, it's a small things and then it builds up. How do you build a bigger movement that will prove that? So in our own little capacity, can we pledge to sort of be conscious, verbalize our biases, and then try and bring that dignity of labor? Not maybe people are doing, maybe people are not doing, but an ask is, can we become conscious of our own things, verbalize it to our immediate influence, and then try and sort of, maybe that'll, in terms of the whole dignity of labor, and then we say that skilling, and so yeah, it's an ask.
I mean, in our own individual capacity, sure, we can, but okay, how about this, that, I mean, one of a byproduct, I'm just putting it out there, it's open of a caste society can also be that it's imperative to keep everyone in their place. So it's going to always remain in that loop where people of certain, caste categories will be kept in that loop and will be kept in that same situation, and there will be no scaffolding structures or an upwardly mobility option for them. How do we go about that then?
So, very sure. I mean, the way Shashank is saying, the problem is there, and कुछ एक चीज करने से नहीं होगा. Obviously, it's a series of steps that has to be taken to make to upgrade the skilling or to add dignity to skilling. जैसे रवीश ने बोला, फाउंडेशनल एजुकेशन, स्ट्रॉन्ग एजुकेशन बेस, डेफिनेटली इट्स अ मस्ट, जो होना ही चाहिए, जो गवर्नमेंट भी काफ़ी सपोर्ट कर रही है, बट इट्स मोर क्वालिटी एजुकेशन इज रिक्वायर्ड. But after having that foundational base, if you go for skilling and you keep on adding gradually, it helps. We listen to cases, बच्चे suicide कर रहे हैं, ज़बरदस्ती पेरेंट्स बोल रहे हैं इंजीनियर ही बनना है, डॉक्टर ही बनना है, प्रिपेयर कर रहे हैं, फाइनली एग्जाम क्लियर नहीं हो रहा है, किड्स आर ऑप्टिंग फॉर सुसाइड. क्यों एलीट क्लास पेरेंट्स नहीं अपने बच्चे को इनकरेज कर सकते, यार मेरा बच्चा कंटेंट राइटिंग में अच्छा है, वो स्किल ले लेना, नहीं बनेगा इंजीनियर. कंटेंट राइटर्स, दे आर अर्निंग ह्यूज आज की डेट में. वी गेट द एग्जाम्पल ऑफ दैट गर्ल ना हु कम्स फ्रॉम अ स्लम्स एरिया, और वो शी हैज़ बिकम अ फैशन डिज़ाइनर, घर से कुछ स्टार्ट करके आज कहाँ कांस में भी शी इज़ रिप्रेजेंटिंग. सो थोड़ा सा वो कहते हैं ना, ज्ञान चक्षु खोलने की ज़रूरत तो है ही, मल्टीपल सीरीज ऑफ स्टेप्स की ज़रूरत है. थोड़ा सा एड ऑन करने के, एज पेरेंट्स इट्स आवर रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी कि स्किलिंग को हम थोड़ा सा और इनकरेज करें. एज अ सोसाइटी वी थिंक कि स्किलिंग इज़ गुड, इट्स नॉट बैड, एंड एज एम्प्लॉयर, एज इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट, एज इंडस्ट्रीज, वी क्रिएट दोज लेडर कि एक अगर बच्चे ने स्किलिंग लिया है, उसको एंट्री लेवल पे ज़रूरत था, ही और शी हैज़ गॉट द जॉब. नाउ वी आर गिविंग देम फर्दर अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ कि वो साथ साथ अपनी एजुकेशन भी कंप्लीट करें, एंड शी और ही गेट्स एम्पल अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ टू राइज. बहुत सारी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस आज की डेट में दे आर हायरिंग पीपल फ्रॉम ITIs as diploma holders. They engage and then they on the job they give them opportunity कि आप साथ साथ पढ़िए, weekend classes करिए, आप अपनी डिग्री लीजिए. It's a beautiful model. What's wrong in that? So these are the few steps we can take as overall. कुछ सोसाइटी करेगी, कुछ इंडस्ट्री करेगी, कुछ पेरेंट्स करेंगे, कुछ हम एज स्टूडेंट्स करेंगे, और कुछ गवर्नमेंट तो कर ही रही है. स्कूल लेवल पे स्किलिंग, वन स्किलिंग मैंडेट करना, इट्स अ ब्यूटिफुल मूव, एंड आई थिंक इट विल ऐड वैल्यू.
I mean, I just want to say, इस कमरे में हम लोग जहाँ बैठे हैं, यहाँ हिम्मत वाले लोग बैठे हैं. यहाँ लोग जो बैठे हैं, ये रवीश बैठा है, और इन्होंने ऑलरेडी इतने बैरियर्स ब्रेक किए हैं, और ये मतलब ये हैं. बट सो इन दिस रूम, you know, there are people who are going to set a different, whatever the larger forces be. So let's not lose sight of that, and let's celebrate also that this room in particular has some outstanding folk who are going to change things. So while I share some of your pessimism in some ways, I also see a lot of, from everything that we've heard today, I see a lot of hope as well.
I think I've been reminded by the speakers that we're running short on time. So I think this is a long debate with not a clear answer in the immediate discussion, right? So any closing remarks? Anyone wants to share something? But we'll end this after this. Yeah.
As people who went to Socrates with their problems, Socrates used to say, I cannot give you answers, but I can give you more questions. The point is, as long as we have raised enough questions that we can focus on and try and find answers to, we'll raise more questions. That is what is needed. I think that is something, a small step has been taken.
On that, we'll close this discussion. Yeah.